Hey, what is up guys? This is Nishi from MST.TV here, back with another Market Watch episode. So today we're taking a look at some pretty unexpected cards to see trending on the market. Maze of the Master was legal this past weekend. That's the second full weekend since its release, but the first since it wasn't overshadowed by YCS Las Vegas. It's looking like a lot of the cards from the set are better than players were expecting and are leaving their mark on the format. Of course, this could just be because some players are experimenting because they're bored of the current format and we are all waiting for a new ban list. But nevertheless, these are things that we should pay attention to as we hopefully get a list within the next couple of weeks, because these strategies definitely could continue to be popular going into next format. Let's get started. Alright, so kicking things off, we're looking at a few cards related to the Odeon archetype, starting with Anubis the Last Judge. Now the deck actually looks really strong. It definitely has a lot more potential than I think people initially gave it credit for. There were actually quite a few different lists that I saw running around from regionals and such over the past weekend, with some people combining the cards with other strategies like Ryziel and Fiendsmith, and others playing the deck pure. Of course, we could say that it was Ryziel or Fiendsmith that did the carrying in those decks, but looking ahead to next format, it's definitely a strong possibility that both Ryziel and Fiendsmith will be hit on the list, so the Odeon cards might be a surprising and unexpected way to help patch up the strategies. Anubis is a strong starter for the deck. It searches for the man with the mark, so it gets your plays going. It's also able to summon itself out of the graveyard by returning Temple of the Kings or traps back to the bottom of your deck, which is a really cool way to recycle resources that you can easily search out later. Now initially, I think with everyone thinking that the deck was just bad, Anubis was actually a fairly cheap card, especially since it's an ultra instead of a secret rare. The card came out at around $10, and it was actually down at a low of around $5 to $6. However, after this past weekend, we've seen the ultra rare version of the card spike considerably to where the cheapest ones available on TCG Player at the moment are $15 each. I think that the deck is really cool, and it definitely adds something different to the format since we have been stuck with Ryziel and Malice for the past several months. I think there's a good chance that the Anubis cards actually do end up seeing some pretty solid meta usage as an engine after this upcoming ban list. Up next is an interesting one. We have Gallant Granite. So this one is definitely an unexpected one. I don't think that this card has really seen much meta usage outside of maybe Adamantippators. So this card is a generic rank 4 Xyz, and it's able to search for any rock monster from your deck. Now historically, rocks aren't that great, the really obvious notable one being Nibiru the Primal Being. Now in the current format, however, this card is actually being talked about as an extra deck option with the Odeon cards. In particular, you can make this card with Man with the Mark and one of the level 4 trap monsters, and then activate its effect to search for Lord of the Heavenly Prison, something that we did talk about in a previous episode. In turn, you can protect your back row from destruction, as well as access any spell or trap in the game. The really cool thing is that if you have Temple of the Kings face up on your side of the field, you can activate what you set during your opponent's turn. So it's almost like having access to a copy of Trap Trick, or how Labyrinth will do this with Coup Clock, where you can flip up a different dimension ground or a dimensional barrier right away. That said, Gallant Granite actually hasn't seen a reprint in quite a while. It was originally an ultra rare, and then it was reprinted as a secret rare in the 2020 tins. Now before, either version of this card was literally like $1 since it saw no play after that reprint, but now we have the original ultras up at $7 to $8, and then the reprint secret rares at $5 each. Definitely a cool one. I don't know if this is going to be like a staple in Odeon decks moving forward, or if it's just like sort of a niche tech option. I guess it could depend on what strategies we can combine the deck with moving forward after the ban list. Definitely an interesting card to make note of, and keep this card in your trade binders and out of your bulk because of that recent spike in price. I do want to take a second to remind all of you to check out our website, MSTmerch.com. Now, over at MSTmerch.com, we have everything that you will need to optimize your Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament experience. We have the basics with white, black, pink, and our new purple matted sleeves, which are my personal favorites, as well as smooth and matted sleeves to double sleeve your valuable cards and sleeves with for tournament play. But we also have some other items that you can really use to customize your collection. We have amazing foil sleeves, including some with the MST.TV logo, and dividers and subdividers so that you can keep your collection perfectly organized and easily accessible. Regardless of if you're a competitive or casual player, I'm certain that you'll find something that you will enjoy over at MSTmerch.com. Next up, we have one of my favorite cards. It's Silhouette Rabbit. So this card is a generic Link 2 monster, and it has a pretty cool effect. It allows you to set a continuous trap monster from your deck to your back row, and then also if you activate a spell or trap that special summons itself, you get to pop a card in your opponent's back row as well. So when this card first came out, I believe it was seeing some usage in decks like Snake Eye, where you could just consolidate your random extra bodies into this card and be able to search for Angel Statue Azarun, who provided a summon negation. The card has fallen off since then, but now the card is of course seeing play in the Odeon deck. A lot of the time you do have extra monsters on your side of the field, or maybe your levels don't line up for an Xyz play, and being able to go into Silhouette Rabbit is actually pretty good. This allows you to search for an engine card, or it could also search for Statue of Anguish pattern, which is an otherwise unsearchable card for the strategy, and that makes your other back row a lot more threatening. Now with this card, it is a secret rare from the Infinite Forbidden, which is relatively new, and then it did get an unexpectedly early reprint as an ultimate rare in OTS Tournament Pack 27. The QCR printing hasn't really changed, but these two other printings I think players see as interchangeable because they are the lower, much more accessible printings. With the secrets, they were at around $15 to $17, they are now up to between $20 and $25, while the ulties have gone from around $25 now up to around $35 to $40. This one is a really cool one, though we do have to be careful because it should see a reprint in the tins later on this year. This is something that I would just own 1 or 2 copies of for yourself to play with, and then definitely offload the rest of them while they are seeing some hype. On to the next one, we have Starliege Seifert. So this is a relatively old card now. I believe this card was really important back in the Dragon Link deck, since you could send itself to the graveyard to search for the baby black and white dragons, as well as add back a Chaos Dragon Levianeer to your hand. Well, now apparently this card is trending once again, but this time because of the Galaxy cards, which got new support in Maze of the Master. Effectively, you can discard a level 8 dragon to search for any level 8 dragon from your deck, and you can also banish this card from your graveyard to add a level 8 light or dark dragon from your graveyard back to the hand. Now, I don't remember the names of all the different dragon monsters in the Galaxy Eyes deck, but there are multiple things that you can search for as well as add back, so this card can be a really big consistency piece as well as a potential extender for the strategy. On top of that, from the deck profiles that I've seen, this card is generally played at 3, which has caused the card's max rarity printing to trend upwards in price. With those secret rares from Chaos Impact, they were down at around $10 to $12. They're now up to around $20 to $25 on TCG Player, though at the time I'm filming this, we don't have any sold listings above 20, so do keep an eye on that. The other holo printing of the card is the ultra rare from the tins, which actually hasn't moved quite that much. It has been around a $5 card for quite a while. Fortunately, the card did get a common printing in the Albaz Strike structure deck, so if you want to play a more budget version of the Galaxy Eyes deck, you still do have that option. Alright, next up, I want to briefly take a look at Trickstar Diva Ridis. For the record, I have no idea if I'm pronouncing that correctly. I'm assuming the first part is supposed to be Diva, so we're just going to kind of go with it. Now, this card is a Link 2 monster that requires 2 level 3 or lower Trickstar monsters to make, but while it's on the field, your opponent takes 200 damage every time they summon, and then it also burns your opponent for 200 damage on its own summon as well. So of course, Trickstar is a deck that aims to burn your opponent continuously, so this card naturally plays into what it's trying to do, and with Light Stage, the damage can rack up pretty quickly. Obviously, against something like Ryzeal, this card isn't going to be really great to make, but it's definitely going to be impactful against something like Malice. Anyways, Trickstars are another deck that got new support in Maze of the Master, though to be fair, I don't think I've seen a single list from the past couple of weekends where the deck has topped or done anything relevant. However, the Trickstar deck is definitely looking like it would be a fun option at the local level, especially if you are someone who played the deck in the past. That said, Diva Ridis has just one printing as an ultra rare from Savage Strike. It wasn't even reprinted in the tins from its year, so as a result, the card is actually up from being $1 or $2 to now being a solid $6 card. This is something that I believe is just an optional one-of for the deck, so don't feel too panicked if you don't have a copy of it, but it's definitely something you can try to dig up out of your holo bulk and try to offload if you can. Alright, one card I want to briefly touch on here is Malice White Rabbit. So we just got the OCG ban list over the weekend, and I think early on, a lot of people are assuming that Malice is going to be the best deck. Of course, they have Dormouse Limited, but the deck's ceiling is still right up there. I think that here in the TCG, players seem to be afraid of the deck being hit, but I think that regardless of what happens on the list, it's still going to be a contender. We have new support for the deck coming out still, and it hasn't even been reprinted yet, so I think Konami will definitely want to keep the Malice cards in the meta so that they can sell future product. That said, I want to briefly mention that White Rabbit is currently at an all-time low. This thing used to be like $40 to $50 a copy, but now it's sitting down at $25 each. I think that this is definitely an indication that players are really afraid of the ban list, but I personally think it isn't really that necessary. I think once the ban list drops and it's confirmed that Malice is still going to be an extremely viable deck going into next format, I'm expecting White Rabbits to rebound back up in price. Now, I'm not saying that you guys should go out and invest in a ton of copies of White Rabbit because, of course, nothing is guaranteed, and it's definitely possible but unexpected that they could hit the deck considerably. But if you were interested in playing Malice before but chose not to because of the price tag, now might actually be a really good time to jump on the deck. And finally, the last card we're talking about is absolutely ridiculous. It's Gyakugaier Panda. So this card is something that is an interesting card in GOAT format. It gains 500 attack points for each monster on your opponent's side of the field, and it's able to pierce as well. So in the Earth Beatdown deck, you have cards like Milas Radiant and Gaia Power that can make this card really, really strong, and if your opponent has a Scapegoat token up, you can basically win the duel right there. Aside from that, the card has no meta relevance whatsoever. That said, this card actually saw all versions of it get eaten up off the market to where the cheapest ones available are like $5 each. Believe it or not, this is actually because of the game show Jeopardy, where Yu-Gi-Oh was the answer and Gyakugaier Panda was actually referenced. So yeah, I don't think that this is a great buyout, definitely a pretty questionable card for people to want to buy. Maybe it's just a troll thing, I don't really know. Definitely do not buy into this card expecting it to be meta relevant in 2025. Alright guys, that is all I have for today's episode. Definitely really cool to see all of the Odeon stuff popping off. I know Tom was actually really big on that strategy when we first did the opening, and I kind of thought it was a little bit like crazy, not really going to be anything too great, but it's cool to see that the deck is actually performing. Anyways guys, if you did enjoy today's Market Watch episode, please make sure you let me know by hitting that thumbs up button. Make sure you leave a comment in the comment section down below. Hit subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time guys, don't forget to hold on to your MST.TV.